We are so excited to announce this. We said the book was coming out in spring 2024, but we're ahead of schedule and it's actually launching October 17th. The Wholehearted Journey, 7 Skills to Develop a Wholehearted Life in a Heartbreaking World is dropping October 17th. Here's the better news is that you can start reading right now for free. At joeljohnson.org, you can download the foreword, the introduction, the first chapter, get into it if you want to and you're enjoying it, or you think one of your loved ones would love to enjoy this book. You can also pre-order it. The ebook is on Amazon right now. So thank you so much for all your support. Head to joeljohnson.org. Please get your free sample, start into it, and we can't wait to see you on October 17th when we have all of it ready to roll and we're dropping it all across the world. Thank you so much. All right. Welcome to the Wholehearted podcast. We're so glad you joined us, where we believe that the life you long for, the life better than you dreamed, is accessed through the heart. And of course, I'm here with the one, the only, my co-host, Shannon White. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We are actually filming today's episode. It's the first time we filmed, and we're coming straight from caseyjohnson.org art studio. So this is brilliant. Not only that, we want to give a big shout out to Rowan Rock, JB, the owner. Thank you so much for just allowing us to be here and to have this incredible setting to share incredible content.
Yes, for sure. I feel like my celebrity dreams are coming true right now with this light and this microphone.
Well, we were talking about earlier that Shannon really wanted to be a movie star or an actress on Broadway, and constantly they were saying to her, your voice isn't loud enough. It's not projecting enough. But hey, shame. Now who's in the spotlight? Yeah?
Look at me now.
I know. You're on the Wholehearted podcast. You're not only on it, you're the co-host of it.
Dreams come true.
Oh my gosh. Well, welcome to the show. This is going to be a lively one. You can already tell because Shannon is living out her dreams right now. And not only that, but I get to be here in sheer acceptance and feeling the vibes of a dream come true at this very moment. It's powerful.
Yes.
So
one
today,
of your dreams come true, right?
Well, some of my dreams are coming true. We're actually talking about skill number 6 out of the 7 skills of Jesus. These were the 7 skills that he used to remain wholehearted in his heartbreaking world. And through those skills, we can learn to do the same. And we are on skill 6. We've gone through 1 through 6. And today we're talking about Jesus' skill that he had an unveiled face with his Father. And what we're talking about, what we can learn about, is that oftentimes in life, we create a persona, a personality that helps us get our needs met. It helps us to please our parents. It helps us to function in our culture. And so we develop this personality, and it helps us, but it isn't us. And there's an authentic one inside of us, an authentic one God made us to be. But sometimes there's really these areas of our personality that end up being self-defeating and limiting in our life. And so how do we navigate that? And one of the things I think that these personalities, we can use them as, is when we're younger, we use them as a crutch. You know, we need their support, you know, as we're learning to navigate our way through the world. But at some point, what you used in middle school is no longer effective in your 20s and 30s and beyond. But sometimes we think and we lose the very place between our authentic self and these personalities we've woven to get our needs met, that we can't even figure out what is us, the real us, and what is this persona that we've created.
I see a lot of middle schoolers, and it just makes me think of, I always say to them, no one will ever tell you that they hope to go back to middle school. So just know that it gets better from here. But they're trying to figure out.
Both my kids are in middle school right now.
It's hard.
7th and 8th grade, and navigating that, just even as a parent,
it's so hard.
It's crazy.
The number of times I hear, I've been friends with these people since first grade, and I got to school today and they won't talk to me, and everyone's going to a sleepover and I'm not invited. It's heartbreaking. So my point is, you're trying to figure out where you fit in and creating a personality. But yeah, so many times it can be just to fit in and not really the authentic you.
Yeah, remember the kid back in middle school that one day would show up in preppy gear, another day it was like Western wear.
That was so
another
me.
day, I know that was me too. But in some way, all of us, we are a lot like that. That we try on different personalities, different things that feel more authentic to us, make us feel more at home, that we're comfortable with, and those things that we develop, they help us to fit in maybe socially, or they help us to be able to navigate things, but they aren't really us. They're things that we've created. That we live in a fallen world as well. And so it isn't Eden. We're no longer there, and our souls were made for Eden. We were made for Eden. We're in this fallen state. And so we create personas to be able to protect ourselves, to be able to navigate, get our needs met, all of those things.
Absolutely.
Hey, I think one of my favorite quotes from a author and therapist, Ian Morgan Crone, his work with the Enneagram, was well known. He says this. I love this. He says, human beings are wired for survival. As little kids, we instinctually place a mask called personality over parts of our authentic self to protect us from harm and make our way in the world. Made up of innate qualities, coping strategies, conditioned reflexes, and defense mechanisms, among lots of other things, our personality helps us know and do what we sense is required to please our parents, to fit in and relate well to our friends, to satisfy the expectations of our culture, to get our basic needs met. Over time, our adaptive strategies become increasingly complex. They get triggered so predictably, so often, and so automatically that we can't tell where they end and our true natures begin. Ironically, the term personality is derived from the Greek word for mask, which is persona, reflecting our tendency to confuse the masks we wear with our true selves, even long after the threats of early childhood have passed. Now we no longer have a personality. Our personality has us. And so today, I want to talk a little bit about how do we know and how do we even see our self-defeating traits of our personality? A lot of us, we haven't even thought about this, right? Because most of our personality traits are made in middle school. And many of us, we never graduate from middle school as far as subconsciously.
Yep. In the psychology field, we call that arrested development, right? Like we stop at a certain age of development, even though we chronologically keep going. And I think the Enneagram really has helped a lot of people figure out that this is my core personality, but I do have these wings that fit me most of the time. And I think that's been really validating for a lot of people who almost felt like sometimes their personality was too much or not good enough or whatever. Every single number has pros and cons to it. And I just think the Enneagram has taught us so much in regard to personality.
Yeah, it definitely has been a lifesaver and a game changer for me. It's kind of like until we get an understanding of who we really authentically are, it doesn't mean that we have to be labeled as that or put into a box, but we kind of get, okay, a lot of people are like this. There are a lot of people are like me, and it's okay. And I can rest in there. It's in the personality, though, that it's so exhausting in your persona. That takes energy, where your authentic self is easy because is just you.
It's God-given. It's the way you were knit.
I love
Absolutely.
what Frederick Buechner said. He describes personalities and kind of gives us an insight. He says this. He says, the original shimmering self gets buried so deep that most of us end up hardly living out of it at all. Instead, we live out of all the other selves, which we are constantly putting on and taking off like coats and hats against the world's weather. And so there we are once again in middle school in the changing room, trying to find out the outfits that fit us. And most of the time, we lose touch with our authentic self, and we live out a bunch of different personalities. We pull them out for different situations, but none of them are really us. It's just what we feel comfortable in. Maybe they hide our insecure areas of our life, and they accentuate the ones that we feel more confident in. And so we end up living out of all of these different outfits, but none of the outfits are us.
Yeah, the brain isn't really even done forming till 25. So I would just say to middle schoolers, middle school parents, that you're really not supposed to know who you are at this age, which I think we could get into a whole thing about, what's going on in our society with gender identity, but it's being curious within our values about these different parts of us. I think that is good to tell parents. Like, my mom let me paint my room this really dark blue with star stencils everywhere. And I'm like, were you not freaking out that I was doing this to your house? And she was like, well, luckily you have an older sister. I knew it was a phase. I share with all middle school parents, I was wearing alien necklaces. I was weird. I was trying to fit in, but I was weird. And I'm like, if you can see it as a phase and something that has to happen to get us to the next part, then it just doesn't seem like it's going to be, this life-altering decision at this age.
Yeah, I agree with that. My son, the Enneagram has helped me hugely with my son. My son is an 8. So I'm not on that side of the triad. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, there's kind of a heart triad, there's a head triad, and there's kind of a gut triad. So a lot of times if you're someone like an 8, you struggle with anger and very direct, right? And so my wife is a 2, which is a helper predominantly. I'm a 3-4, so we're heart people. So anger isn't something that really has come up in our home. And so we have this child, and I think my daughter is a 2 or 3, somewhere in there. But I have this child who's an 8, which Casey's father was an 8. So we understand that. But I have nobody in my family who gets angry, who is so forceful, so blunt, just tells you their opinion. So like yesterday, I was like, hey son, do you want to help me with the groceries, bring them inside? And he's like, no. and I said, what? He said, no, I really don't. But
typical middle school response.
If you want me to help you, I will help you, but I don't want to do it. It's just so blunt and
black and white.
Yes, and I love it because you never wonder what's going on in his head, right? So
a lot of our best leaders are 8s.
No, it's true.
We need 8s.
It's true. 8s and 3s are generally heads of large organizations. Even our churches, all the mega churches are run by 8s or 3s, and I should say the majority of them. But even beyond that, in the business world, 8s and 3s are there.
Yeah, my pastor is an 8. And I would just say, remember the verse, in your anger, don't sin. A lot of times we see anger as the sin. But I honestly think it says a lot about you and Casey. If you are parenting an 8 well, they're going to know how to manage their anger well. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah, we're working through, attitude, of course, and we're working through when it's appropriate. And so that's something that he's navigating as well. Like because some of the kids at school are vicious, right?
Absolutely.
And so we teach
mostly the girls.
Yeah. I teach my son to be kind, but sometimes you gotta punch that bully in the nose verbally. You gotta clap back. You can't just take it and be meek. Well, I shouldn't say, but just so humble and kind that you never strike back. So he was pretty excited last night when I was like, hey, you need to stand up. And what would you say? He said, well, I wanted to body shame this individual, but I decided not to. I said, that's very good. That's great. I said, but what if you approached it in this way? And I gave him a couple, little verbal jabs that he could just check somebody to say, hey, here's a boundary in a middle school terminology.
Right. I teach kids and teens because it'll stick out in their mind. We can be a wimpy mouse, which is passive, an angry monster, aggressive, or a friendly person who is assertive. They speak up for themselves, and I teach we can say the same exact thing, like stop it, in various tones that will send one message or another. So I think teaching our children assertiveness is huge and something a lot of us miss.
Yeah, and that is also, those three things are personalities, right? Like we can adopt a little mouse kind of personality, especially if we're growing up in a boisterous home or even an verbally abusive home. Sometimes just not saying anything is your survival mechanism, right? It's better to just let it go. You're not going to win. Ultimately it's going to be a negative situation if you're that way.
And I know a little girl who's just naturally sweet and shy and growing up in a wonderful family. Her sister told me this week that a peer said, hey, unpack my backpack for me. And she was like, I just didn't want to be mean, so I did it. So, I think her personality is probably going to be a helper. But she has to learn assertiveness in her helping because that's going to help her with boundaries and things like that. Self-care is huge in the helping profession.
Yeah.
And I think assertiveness, even with clients to say, unfortunately, I don't have that appointment available, is really, really important for our self-care.
Yeah, and the monster can be a way that we learn to navigate the world and adopt. We attack before we're ever attacked. It's the best defense is an offense kind of strategy.
And a lot of times, if people are learning assertiveness late in life, they come off aggressive and they have to learn to dial it back. I've seen that happen a lot too, because they're like, I finally found my voice, which is wonderful, but not to do it in an aggressive way.
Yeah, well, Jesus taught his disciples, he said, be as shrewd or as cunning as a snake, but as innocent as a dove. And so there's that balance of, okay, you need to be kind and warm and inviting, but you better be shrewd and not let yourself be taken advantage of.
Yeah, Jesus was not a pushover by any means.
He deployed both. He was able to be soft in those moments, with the lepers and the children and the woman caught in adultery. But he was definitely, assertive when it came to those religious hypocrites, the whitewashed tombs, as he called them. He was able to do both and to navigate through life. And so that is partly personality, right? You have to know when to you have to know when to be assertive, and you have to know when to kind of take a step back. And what is the best scenario and the best strategy in every circumstance that you enter?
Pick your battles, which anyone married knows that, right?
It's true.
I encourage when people are learning to give language to tending to their hearts, to sit with it and say, is this really something that I need to make a battle? Sometimes it is. A battle being I just need to speak up and say that it really affected me.
Yeah, or developmental feedback.
Right. Or just what somebody we know and love, Teresa Phillips, taught me is you're showing up. You're being honest. You're being authentic, right?
You're present.
Yes. But sometimes it's like, you know what? That really didn't matter to me. It stung in the moment, but I can let it go. Great. But if you sit with it and you say, yeah, I need to talk about this. This is important. Then you show up and you're authentic in that. But I think it's about learning to pick those battles.
Yeah, and that takes wisdom.
Did you know Shannon means wise one?
No, I actually didn't know that Shannon mean wise one, but it's definitely fitting.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love this scripture, 2 Corinthians 3:16. verse 18 says, in the Message paraphrase, it says, whenever they turn to face God, God removes the veil, and there they are, face to face, nothing between us and God, our faces shining with the brightness of his face. And so we are transfigured, much like the Messiah, our lives gradually becoming brighter and more beautiful as God enters our lives and we become like him. This is really powerful. When you think about the transfiguration of Jesus, that moment on the mountain where a few of his disciples saw him fully in his glory, like shining bright. They described it. His clothes were whiter than any, washing could ever do. And here he was. And they also not only saw the lightning of his transformation, they heard the thunder of God's voice say, "This is my son, listen to him." But Jesus, just approximately 3 days before, he taught this amazing lesson. And he said, how much would you pay for a soul? To paraphrase, how much could you gain the whole world and profit all that much? But if you lost your soul, would it be worth it? Mm-hmm. And then 3 days later, after teaching that message, he shows a few of his disciples his authentic soul and who he really was. And you notice that there was no distance between him and his Father. And I think that's really the very first stepping place for us, is to be authentic with our Heavenly Father, who is perfect and always kind. And that leads us to be able to begin to discover who we really are, and then also be able to begin to open up and to be comfortable in our own skin, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Learning to show up, which is kind of what I was just saying. But yeah, when we've done the healing work and allowed God to enter in some of those wounded places, we show up unveiled.
Yeah. I have in the book, The Wholehearted Journey, that's coming out here October 17th. We've upped the date. The launch date is just 50-something days away. We're very excited about it. But one of the things that we do in the book, but then really in Wholehearted University, which is coming out in spring 2024, we're excited about that. That's the whole video curriculum and workbook and online videos and film. It's going to be amazing. But in that, we have an exercise for folks to take 3 of the skills that we've already done work for and worked through. And the very first skill is a beloved child identity, and learning our father wounds and our mother wounds and how to heal from that. The second skill, which was courage, but it's also the starting point of removing some of our coping strategies from the past. And thirdly is agreements that we've made with the enemy, or agreements that are lies about ourselves. And so when you take these 3 attributes, you take beloved child identity, you take, the courage to enter coping strategies, you take your spiritual smarts and the agreements, and you break those. But where you have discovered your agreements, your coping strategies, and what you've done to try to please your parents or to navigate growing up in their home, you can really begin to discern some of those self-defeating places in your own personality. Kind of gives you an area to start off, because it's so big to say, we create this persona, and who's your real authentic self and who's this personality? And so doing this exercise in the book, and maybe some of our listeners right now, you can begin to think through, what were some of the things that you did to make it in your family? What were some of the roles that you naturally adopted? What are some of the strategies that you developed in middle school or growing up that helped you be able to relate with friends? Or were you always the funny one? Were you always the one who was just the go along? Were you the leader of or were you the attacker? What are those strategies that you developed? And then also, what agreements have you thought to yourself? Like, some some common agreements are, man, I'm just average. I'm really, I'm never going to do anything great, or I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. I'm on my own. It's up to me to make life happen. All of these are, I'll never be poor like my parents, or all of those things begin to be agreements in our heart, and they really shape our personalities. So if you can take those three things and you begin to say, in the wake of that, now that I'm a 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever age you are, what things am I still employing that are really self-defeating, that break relationships, that maybe you haven't gotten a promotion at your job, or maybe they limit you in other ways. So what are those things in our personality that we've created back then? They were a crutch and they brought us support. But now we can let them go. And I see that scene out of Forrest Gump where he's in those braces and he starts running, and I was running, he's running. And so too, like, that's the authentic self when they're no longer encumbered by the persona.
Right. I think we have to be a little careful of saying it's either this or that, because I'll share from my childhood, I was often called intense. And I think I was a natural feeler, and I felt very deeply, hence why I went into the work of being a therapist, probably. So I think I learned to be more logical, to be more of a thinker. And I think what was labeled as intensity was actually really deep feelings and really sensitive. And so I would maybe even start there with being curious about what were some of those labels or names I was given. And maybe that was really an authentic thing for me. And it's not that that's bad, but maybe it was coming across in a way that I had to be intense to feel heard. I actually worked for an agency, and we all took the Myers-Briggs test, and the director said, I have never seen someone come up equally feeling and thinking. And it was so validating for me, because I think I'm at the core a feeler, but I became a thinker. And I think God has used that wound in my life, because I tend to do pretty well with couples counseling, and that I can do the whole logical thing.
And you counsel men as well. So you can kind of go back and forth.
Right. So stereotypically, men can be pretty logical, to the point. Women are more feeling. And so I can kind of do a little bit of both. So that's a really neat way in that God helped me define what was maybe labeled as something negative as, no, this is a strength when used in the right way.
Yeah. And those labels can work in multiple ways, right? You can say, oh, well, they're just shy. And so you take that on as your own personality. And maybe as a kid you were kind of shy. Or you rail against it and you say, well, I'm shy. I can't be that. And so now you push into areas that maybe you're a class clown as a kid, but then you always feel like, man, I better not be shy. I better be forceful and push my way in, or be noticed. And so you can either accept those or rail against them, but it often can be self-defeating.
Where really shy people sometimes get the false identity of being an introvert. Well, an introvert is actually someone who just gets their energy from being alone. And what looks like shy is, I'm just recharging because I'm around 15 people all day long and I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
So I think, remember, a parent's voice becomes a child's inner voice.
Wow, that's powerful.
And so we need to really be careful. So big. For Lincoln, your son, you are created to be such a leader. You have your opinions. You know what you think. And sometimes there's a time to say, you know what, I'm going to help Dad because he looks like he needs help, or he asked me to. So just helping them craft that true identity into the way that God really created it to be. My daughter is quite bossy, but we just say she's aggressively helpful. Yes. I have no idea where she gets that from.
I hear that. That's nothing like anyone in your family at all. Well, I think that's a really great point to jump off from here. You guys, the book is coming out October 17th. We're so excited at Wholehearted. And
we're on camera. Can you hold it up? You're actually
yes,
holding
I
a
actually
copy.
am. Here it is.
Woo!
This is a proof. You can actually see it says not for resale right across there. But here's a copy.
The original, the OG.
The OG. And those quotes that I was quoting from today are all actually in the book. And it will definitely be a dynamic thing that will change your life and change a loved one's life. The cool thing about it is it's not only for you, but it's also to help you navigate your loved ones who are struggling or who are wanting to move from maybe one position in life and to move forward. It's going to be very helpful to know those 7 skills that Jesus used to stay wholehearted in a heartbreaking world so that we can learn to do the same. Again, joeljohnson.org. You can get all of our show notes there. If we've mentioned different materials, you can find them there. And not only that, but even though we're launching on October 17th, those who are listening today, you can actually begin reading the book at joeljohnson.org. If you'll just go there, you can download the foreword, chapter 1, the introduction, start reading now. And you can actually pre-order the ebook. Is available as well right now on Amazon. So you can go there, pre-order, or if you want to just not wait till October 17th, dive in. You can download the book, and not only the book, the audiobook chapters for all of that. So if you're a listener or a reader, it's available for you right there. Thanks so much for joining us today on Wholehearted Podcast. Shannon, any last thoughts?
Nope, I'm so happy for you with the book. I know
Thank
that
you.
is a labor of love, and it's so just a God-given present to be holding that right now. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And till next episode, we'll see you. God bless.
Thank you.